Let's get started. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the entertaining, as always, Founders Over 55 Club. We're so excited that you're here, that you're joining us and taking your valuable time to be together. You are among a community of people who firmly believe that our age is an asset, particularly when it comes to starting and building a company, and a company of our dreams that could be helpful to the community, that could be productive in our own lives and really bring a sense of joy and well-being, as well as, some cash. So we're going to talk about that. The Founders Over 55 Club started a couple of years ago out of Agency, which is an organization that helps companies who are helping to improve the aging journey. And we are a collegial community of entrepreneurs in our Encore careers, and we gather together in fellowship to learn new skills, to help each other out, to be partners on this journey of building a company. And collectively, this is such a powerful group here. We're here to be champions of an age-friendly business ecosystem. There's strength in numbers. And certainly having these many folks tuning in, and not only today, but in all of the previous events that we've had, and we hope to see you again and again. This is a force, we're a force to be reckoned with. So we're really excited about the conversation today, and we're looking forward to all of your participation. So my name is Danielle Duplin, one of the co-founders of the Founders Over 55 Club and co-founder of Agency. And I'm here with the most awesome steering committee. So I would love to introduce you to them right now. So say hello, Mary Cronin. Mary, you're on mute.
Hello.
And Mary, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that I'd have a speaking role. I'm Mary Cronin. I am a member of Agency with my own company, 4Q Catalyst. I'm also a professor at Boston College and a social entrepreneur and a member of the Encore Boston Network Board and a fan of Rick Terrien.
Beautiful. And Jerry Wellesenk, one of my first event partners through the MIT Enterprise Forum when we launched Agency a couple of years ago. So Jerry, say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jerry Wellesenk. Actually, a career of entrepreneurialism, but that's primarily in the video game business. I've been sort of semi-retired for about the last 10 years, but still very, very involved in groups like this and the MIT Enterprise Forum, where we promote entrepreneurship and try to help people get the resources and the skills they need to push forward. So pleasure being here.
And if you're interested in learning more about the MIT Enterprise Forum and all of the resources that they offer for startups, please take a look at our previous event that we hosted just about a month or so ago about all of that. And so then Doug Dixon from Encore. Welcome, Doug.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Doug Dixon, board chair of Encore Boston Network, which is an organization that believes firmly that people over 50 have a lot to give. And we do that in various ways, including business startups and various forms of self-employment. So welcome. I also want to mention that I helped to co-found an organization called the National Encore Network a few years back. It's celebrating its 10th anniversary now in conjunction with Encore.org, which is, I think, an organization that many of you may have some familiarity with as well. So we're all in this together, and we look forward to hearing what Rick has to say.
Nice. Beautiful. And my friend Paul Michaels, who is running tech for our event today. Paul, say hi.
Clearly, I'm having problems finding the mute button on everyone.
It's okay. We're all learning new skills.
Yes, mine is it's a video game. My name is Paul Michaels, and I am the founder of Get Fit Made Easy. And what I do is I help busy professionals and entrepreneurs like yourselves get fit, boost your health and productivity when life is really busy. And so I'm happy to be of service to you guys, and I love working with the founders over 55 and being part of the committee.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, everybody. And really, we are a member-led group. And so for those of you who have a skill you want to share, or you want to get more involved in helping us to produce events or to market them or to bring some thought leadership to the table, we welcome your participation. So you can all find us online at the foundersover55.com, foundersover55.com. So check it out. There'll be videos of our previous events there. Yes, there will be a video of this event posted there. And we just launched a LinkedIn group. We now realize that there's a lot of folks beyond our geographies that want to get involved. So we encourage each of you. It is a private group. So when you, asked to join, just tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll let you in. So we're really excited to see how this group grows. So one thing for sure, as we all have had this shared experience in the past year, is going through this pandemic together. And, I think about the 3 stages of pandemic, the react mode, which is what happened to us about a year ago, where we all just had to put our pencils down, completely change our lives, and kind of look around and see, how do we get into the next step, which is, reflect deeply on what this all means to us personally, professionally, our role in the world, our careers, our potential, what do we want to do with the time we have here? Who do we want to, there's something about like, who's in your bubble, and what do you choose to do? This is the time where there's deep reflection around, every moment matters, right? So, and I think that coming out of the reflection stage, now that we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, there's vaccines on the horizon, we're starting to get in line for that, and so forth. We're now entering the rebuild phase, right? How do we come back better, stronger? What did we learn? What were the new alliances that happened in this past year? What did we shed from our lives? What did we welcome into our lives? And when we rebuild, what does that look like? How can that be different? Do we have to go back to it was? I don't know that we ever go back to the way things were. We're rebuilding in this new normal. And my hope, and for today and this discussion, is that we're actually get a bonus 4th phase, which is a renaissance. Like how does this now really change our lives? What does it mean when the whole world can work remotely and work online? And what does it mean to start a company when it looks like the economy is in the tank? Well, back in 2009, when the economy used to be was in the tank before, we had more startups coming out of that time period than ever before. Airbnb, we could start to name them, right? Ones that are actually unicorns now. So, nobody knows. So that's why it's vital that we're just on this journey together. And then we just help each other out, because everybody has a dream that's worth sharing and worth pursuing. So with that as the setup, I'd love to now turn it to Mary, who will introduce our fabulous author and guest speaker, Rick Terrien. So Mary, take it away.
Thank you. And amen to everything Danielle said, and welcome everyone. And there's so much to say about Rick that I'm going to just read very briefly part of his lifetime of entrepreneurial experience and the wisdom and the insights that he put into his book, Ageless Startup, and that he's about to share with us today. So Rick and his wife started and ran a family business called Banner Graphics for 25 years. Then Rick became the founder and the president of Universal Separators, which is an industrial recycling business, and that won Fast Company magazine Fast 50, a very prestigious award. And then for the last decade, because that wasn't enough for Rick, he has focused on developing innovative and sustainable regional food networks and businesses. In 2013, he founded Innovative Kitchens, which provided services to farmers and food entrepreneurs. And in 2018, he was a founding member of Food 21, which is a food sustainability network in the Pittsburgh area. And again, as if that didn't keep him busy enough, Rick is also an accomplished inventor with 9 US and foreign patents in industrial fluid recycling, and his engineering solutions have resulted in recovering tens of millions of gallons of oil worldwide that were previously lost as wastewater. He was awarded, partly as a result of these inventions, the US Small Business New Product of the Year recognition by the National Society of Professional Engineers for developing products that demonstrate exceptional engineering research, design, and overall impact on the national economy. And again, in recognition of all of his social entrepreneurship accomplishments, he received the Encore.org Purpose Prize as a fellow in 2015. And there's a longer list, but I don't want to get between you and all the things that I know you want to hear from Rick. So I'm going to end by saying I am just very proud and grateful that Rick is also authoring a chapter in my new book, which is called Starting Up Smarter: Why Founders Over 50 Build Better Companies. So thank you, Rick, for being with us. Over to you.
Now we can unmute.
And you're allowed to unmute, Rick.
Just like I knew what I was doing. Thank you, Danielle, and thank you very much for the generous introduction, Mary. I appreciate it very much.
So Rick, thank you so much for being here. And we are all gathered to hear more about the wisdom that you have researched and shared so generously in your book, Ageless Startup. So before we dig into the contents, I actually would love to just understand more about that term. I love the sound of it. It just feels so open-ended. It feels like this journey is, doesn't have an end point. And so tell us more about where you came up with the phrase Ageless Startup.
So like all good inventors, I stole part of it. And I did, Doug's there smiling, he knows this. The Purpose Prize has been given out for about a decade, and they've used a tagline almost throughout the entire time of making a difference is ageless. And that really struck me. And I think it's as true as anything that you could say about our demographic. We're not here necessarily to change the world, or we can change the world if you want to. But the idea is that you can make a difference, and that's what the world needs. And I'm going to follow up on Danielle's introduction of talking about a renaissance. This is we do have a renaissance age of entrepreneurship right in front of us. We've never had more raw materials. There are a lot of problems out there, and I think they're going to get worse before they get better. So it's a perfect time to put our skill sets and our knowledge and our network to work.
Love it. And we'll dig into how to do each of those things. And I would also love to just kind of get into the shared mindset here. When we talk about the world of startups, it's often dominated by these fantastical stories of huge multi-billion-dollar exits. And yet in your book, you, in many ways, focus on the benefits of starting small and, perhaps even staying small. And so I'd love for you to just give us a sense of when you say startup and so forth, like, what are the different ways in which that manifests itself?
So it's a full spectrum, and there, obviously is some illicit and bad parts to it, but I don't want to knock, other than those, I don't want to knock any parts of it. There are all kinds of people who have made a living in the investment world and starting up investment-led companies. I've done it. There's nothing bad about that. What I want to do is hold up and support and celebrate the smaller end of that market. As a recovering economic developer at one time in this gig life, my economic developer friends used to sneer at these small one-person businesses. They would call them lifestyle businesses. And in fact, it's just the opposite of that. People can come out and start their own small business, even especially as a one-person business, and then learn to network together. You can change the world. And there's nothing secondary about that approach. It's actually a really wise approach. I know a lot of friends who have led large companies and who just said to heck with it and have started up and are living a much better and freer life of their choosing by becoming an independent entrepreneur.
So let's talk about that. So when we say startups and entrepreneur, we also mean solopreneur, right? So tell us what the benefits that you've seen about being a solopreneur, and how does somebody who is a one-person shop, if you will, like look bigger than they are, but also, round out skill sets that we may not individually possess, but that we need for our company?
What a great question. So first, the idea of solopreneurs, one-person shops. The U.S. Census Department calls these non-employer businesses. Just to be technical, and in case you want to follow this up, pre-pandemic, there was 32 million businesses in the United States. Of those 32 million, 25 million were one-person businesses, and most of those worked less than full-time. So it's a profoundly important part of our economy, and a very important part to 25 million people's lives. And that's 25 million people is 10 years of job growth in the United States, give or take. So Danielle, your question was, how do folks raise their profile and as solo entrepreneurs? I think that, and this is one segment of this spectrum again, but the way I've watched this operate, and I recommend in that book, is you come out as a single entrepreneur, one person, arm up, get the entity stuff right, get all of the yada yadas in place, and we can talk about that. But then learn to network. None of this Lone Ranger stuff we grew up with works in commerce. It's very rare when it does, and usually they're making it up if they tell you they are a Lone Ranger. You need to work in networks, and those networks can come together like a pickup basketball game. You meet the problem, you meet the project that's going on, you come together as a team, you pull together 3 or 4 individuals that you can work with because you tested them out in your networks, and you come together for those projects. You deal with the projects. Maybe some stay with it, maybe some meld back into the group, into the network. But it's knowing and trusting your peers and what you're good at, and they get to know you, you get to know them, and you can rise to the occasion when these opportunities arise.
So let's dig into that a little bit about building your network, because as I mentioned, we now have a group on LinkedIn. We all have our individual LinkedIn profiles, hopefully. And clearly we gather here, Founders Over 55. So tell us more though, how do you really leverage your network, especially for those of us who came from a corporate career, probably spent decades building up, a reputation and so forth, among in large corporates, and then find yourself kind of out on your own. Do you call your former clients? Do you call your colleagues? Like, what do you, tell us what you do to leverage that network that you've built.
So I have some self-interest in the answer, so be cautious here.
Okay.
You refer to your LinkedIn group. It is finding your peers, finding your tribes, finding people you are comfortable with, and checking back with them, learning what your comfort zone is with other folks. I'm working with a small group of folks to start a center for ageless entrepreneurs. It's going to be a peer-to-peer business networking and business development network. Not necessarily, there will be some training aspects to it. But you're doing that good work in Boston, and folks are doing it all over the country, all over the world. It's a matter of nurturing your networks and taking good care of them. You'll know how to kick people out when the time comes. But by and large, the value comes in leveraging your network.
And I'll say that I'm one of those folks who did, had 26 years at my former employer and started when the company was small. And by the time I left on my, what I call crossover date. I had been at the company longer than I hadn't been at the company. So it was over half my life. And, so you grow up in a place, and found myself reaching out to a lot of folks who also are in transition. And it turns out it is such a rich and vibrant group of people who are kind of, in this hyper exploratory mode. You have a lot of skills that you built up over the years, and you're trying to we're kind of like free ions, trying to like find where do you connect, to maybe say, because as we know, the research says it's your weak ties as much as it is your strong ties that helps you land your next job or your next opportunity. So I'd love your thoughts on, you've been in many different sectors as an entrepreneur and building business. How do you start into a sector that maybe feels a little new?
Fear is a good thing. It's a motivator. Nobody's gonna harm you going into a new, they may make fun of you or they may belittle you, but you're not gonna get hurt doing this, right? So the idea is just to plunge in, make friends, learn who's got strengths that you need, offer your strengths to those other people. I think it's what we've all done throughout our lives, and we don't call it entrepreneurship. I mean, people have been starting small 1, 2, 3 person businesses for 10,000 years. We've been taking care of each other as a culture and a societies without calling it entrepreneurship for a long time. We've all got these skills. People on this call have done things that are much harder than this in their own lives. Don't let it be daunting to you. What I found when was writing the book and consulting with friends on this is that the hardest thing that it is for people to do is give themselves permission to do this. They think it's for other people. They think it's for somebody that's really smart and it's come down from the mountain with some tablets. You've gone to all kinds of small businesses, all of us, our entire lives, and you can do most of those, but you should do one that you're really good at.
So let's talk about that. So now we, we feel like we want to become an entrepreneur or solopreneur. We're poised. We're giving ourselves the permission. We're connecting with other people, like-minded people. But how do you know what to work on? How do you know what's worth it? How do you know what's a good enough idea to build a company around? I know in your book, you focus a lot on helping others. Is it just like, is our cohort, to kind of throw out kind of an ageist kind of thing, like we all meant to do mission-driven nonprofits at our age? Or is this like, should we, how do you know what to work on? How do you know what that idea is?
The answer is going to be a little different for everybody, but a metaphor that I use is a couple of different newspaper articles that were written about work I did that was 25 years apart, completely different industries, completely different reporters. And it just happened that they both put the headline in that Rick Terrien does work that nobody else wants to do.
Okay. Yeah.
And that may become a little thick-skulled by following this path, but there's some wisdom hiding in there, kind of in plain sight. You look for problems that need solutions, and all of us have extensive experience. It doesn't have to be in nuclear physics. It can be in landscaping. We've all got our strengths, and learning to leverage those and bring them to bear to a very specific problem. Even if you can't solve all of the problem, this is that networking theory. You bring your tribe with you. It's a little bit of skating to where the puck's going to be. You want to find the problems, and if there's a problem, now you've got raw material for a fix.
Well, and I think, like you say in your book too, that if you've been in one sector, for a long time, you actually know what those problems are because you were like bothered by them, or you hired other people to help you solve them, or you have developed a point of view about them. And now you get to be on the other side of it, potentially, consulting or having kind of a niche idea. So can you tell us your story about you had this niche idea for the machines, lubricants, and like it turned into turns out a lot of people have that problem. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it was a problem that nobody wanted. It was hard and dirty, especially dirty. And you could throw money at the problem and make it go away. So that's what corporations were doing, but they were throwing oil away, and it was going into our waste, into our environment. I had sold a business after 25 years. That's the one that my family and I ran. And that was right at age 45. So all this other stuff's happened since 45. So we use that as a deep demarcation. I had learned something as a kid working with my dad. I knew that this problem was in multiple factories because you could see it. The smoke, atmospheric carbon was pouring, and soot was pouring out of the smokestacks because of a problem that they were leaving run wild inside the plants. There was no fix for it. I had learned a little something about this when I was a young man with my dad, and took that little bit of knowledge I had to some friends of all places at Harley-Davidson in Milwaukee. And I said, I know you got this stupid problem, and I think I can fix it. And I made them, they were very generous. They let me make a lot of mistakes on the way to fixing it, but we did fix it. We did get it figured out, and that's what we got all the patents for. But it was solving a problem, again, that nobody wanted to do. This was one of those 2 articles was about this very project. And it was just a matter of finding something simple that would work under those circumstances. And I was able to call in networks of people to help with the production, with the marketing, with this, all of the rest of it, sourcing. And then it got me on this small is beautiful. We all grew up with that book. It's a really good opportunity to run a corporation around that model as well. When we won the Fast 50, which is now the world's 50 most innovative companies, I think even up to this date, we're the smallest company to ever win it. We only had 4 people. But we had customers in Africa and China and all over Asia and Europe. And it was just 4 people, each leveraging their own networks, and me pulling those networks together to focus on this specific problem. That company's still going. It's almost 25 years now.
Wow, I love that idea where even though the problem is complex, the solution can be simple, and if there's enough of a multiplier, enough companies, have that same problem that the solution can fix, like you could really build, obviously, a sustainable business around that.
Well, correct. But what's interesting about that, Danielle, is to your point, is that when we first started, there was probably only 3 or 4 potential customers, maybe up to half a dozen or 10 per state in the United States.
Wow.
But if we put enough of these systems together, it would be a living. I would have a viable company out of it. And it ended up much better than that, because all of a sudden the solution was so apparent and was working so well in that little tiny niche that we'd figured out, that people in other manufacturing industries started utilizing it. And that's when I realized, hey, we've got a bigger thing here than we thought.
Nice. I love that story. There's so much to learn and unpack from that story. So I just want to shout out to everybody that if this is like bringing up ideas for you, or you have questions or similar stories to share, please put it in the chat. Because after we go through a couple more questions with Rick, we're going to open it up to everybody. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback and reactions along the way. So I invite you to put your thoughts in the chat. So Rick, let's get down to brass tacks then. So a lot of the case studies that you profile in your book, you ask them for like, what's their tip? And they always say like, get a good financial person. So help us understand, like, what are some practical, like, first couple of steps to just get off the ground? And, again, how do you do that on a shoestring budget? Like, we may not necessarily want to be like, how do you do it in a way where you're not necessarily paying full market rate for all this stuff, hiring full time? Like, all that just seems rather daunting sometimes.
It's a big question, and it's a good question. The first part of the question I would say is you really do want to enter the world of entrepreneurship hardened up. You want to get you do go for those entity statuses. Many people say, well, I'll get to that later. I'm going to go try it first and see and they end up practicing and playing at entrepreneurship. If you're going to do it, get the equipment you need wrapped around yourself, because if you're going to deal with other entrepreneurs, which I think you should, they're going to want to deal with a peer, a professional. And if you don't have that and you're not up to their standards, you're not going to end up in their network.
Okay. And when you say equipment, can we just tell us a little bit more about what you mean?
Well, and I'm using the term loosely, but I do mean to harden up and get what you want to do is put yourself in place as a professional entrepreneur. You want to get an entity wrapped around you. Almost all of us are using LLCs. There's these beautiful little B Corps that are coming out, complex but gorgeous. There's S Corps and partnerships, and God forbid C Corps. I've done that. But going through those steps and picking one, probably an LLC, is certainly a minimum entry point in my world. But then all the small things behind that, the business banking account, your federal employee employment number, FEIN number, the credit cards, the business banking relationships, the insurance relationships, so that when and if you're serious about it and you're going to go out and look for some problems to fix and solve, you've got all this to put on the table and say, this is who I am. I'm here and I'm serious. So,
nice. And I'd like to add to that too, maybe a website or at least a landing page or some online reference. Because I've found, you get involved in these great conversations, and then oftentimes the next step is somebody say, well, just send me more information, or they might try to Google you before you even have your meeting. So to set up a really nice looking online presence, which I confess I haven't done for my own personal business, but we did it for agency for sure. And we're getting really much better at it doing it for Founders Over 55. So I think that's also important, right? Is to kind of, if you don't know a lot about the social media landscape, is to find somebody who can help you with that.
Yeah, without any doubt. And to get your presence established there, you can establish your presence early, just to get the domain names, get the real estate holding your name, your preferred name, and do that early and often. And now all these things have probably been in the pipeline, but the pandemic is pushing them forward on a much faster scale, is all these new collaboration techniques. Look what we're doing right now. And there's these things like, this new Clubhouse and all the rest. These are really valuable as sales tools. I mean, this is heaven to be able to communicate with people. So you do want to put time into that. Danielle, you're exactly right.
Right. Well, and I love your thoughts there about partnering with other entrepreneurs. So a little anecdote, although I don't know if they're on, if Peter Nash and Susan Grealish are on. So two folks who kind of bumped into each other at an early Founders Over 55 Club event. She's an early stage entrepreneur, and he is someone who is an expert at helping to form teams and think through strategy. So he's like, I don't necessarily have the idea to build my own company, but I want to help other people have the ideas. And she's like, I have an idea how to build a company, but I don't know how to scale it. So they met at one of our events, and next thing you know, her business has really been codified and, taken to the next level. She was ready for sales during the holiday season with Ginger Gems. And so I love this idea of partnering with other solopreneurs, as well as entrepreneurs in the network. So I put that all out there for each of you, because we are going to go into breakouts in a little bit. And so it's an opportunity for you to start, asking what do you need and what can you offer? So great. So then, now you're cooking along, and you got started, you figured out, but now you really want to grow. You want to get some customers. You want to start getting the momentum. So I have kind of two questions around that. What do you do in the mindset during all those periods where it doesn't feel like you're getting the clients, and maybe, you start questioning, the idea that you picked. And then the second part of that question is, how do you go about getting customers?
You need to pick the right problem. You need to speak with authority to that problem. And you need to understand that the world really needs you. We're not, because of our age, we're not free of this imposter syndrome where people think, well, I'm not the right person, or I'm not good enough for this. You've all lived strong, complex, interesting lives. You have backgrounds and skills that you can apply to this problem. The world needs you. The world needs your solutions. It's up to you to define the market that you're going to sell them into. And I think that that's an ongoing, never-ending quest to continually refine that. I'm looking at a quote over the top of my computer from Seth Godin, who a lot of us read. It says, the best way to make a hit is to build something for the smallest viable audience and make it so good that people will tell their peers. Just because you don't have mass markets doesn't mean you're a failure. It actually means you might be smarter than the average bear. Seth refers to this as minimal viable audience. We've all had minimal viable product on our brains for a while, but minimal viable audience is a very compelling way to approach sales, and I kind of live by that.
Yeah, I think that's the rigor of that, of testing in a very iterative fashion and really solving for your super user is something that, works for startups of any age.
Right.
And so I know a lot of folks that, have certain passions that they've, has as their hobbies along the way. And now maybe this is an opportunity to do that at scale. A dear friend of ours, I'm looking at Monica, a dear friend of ours at Fidelity, he's this, fabulous VP of marketing, but all along is doing little crafts. And, when he left, just opened up an Etsy shop and now is, applying all of his marketing skills to now promoting the craft. So it didn't have to stay small as a craft. It actually was able to get big.
Well, and then look at what that person can do for, let's say, the rest of us. I mean, wouldn't we all love to have an hour of that person's time to talk about how they got there, or some subset of us? There's all kinds of pieces of this that we can market to one another. And what I'm going to hope to do with this Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs, and I will put that into the chat, the link for it. What I hope to do is not only get us talking to one another like that and helping each other to up our skills as entrepreneurs, but then put all of our backs together and tell the world, hey, here's a few million years of human experience ready to apply to your problems. What problems you got? That's compelling. It's hard to get people with skills and knowledge and understanding and know-how willingly to come at a project, when in fact, by joining together, as you're doing with your LinkedIn group, that's we're hoping to do in parallel with this center, bringing the groups together and working from strength in numbers is really positive, even though you're one of many.
So, so then I think it's a great time to bring in this question from William Keller. So William, I don't see your video on, so I don't know if you want to ask your question directly or I can ask it on your behalf. Okay, I think he's still on mute. Okay, so now you have this brilliant, you have this lifetime of wisdom and you want to break into, you want to call on large companies. And so William's asking, like, as somebody who's new and solo, he wants to, for instance, break into like delivery systems using drones, So there's a lot of big companies to knock on their doors. How do you build your base? How do you get that, knock on that door with that level of authority?
Well, I know what I do, and it may not be what William or anybody else does, but I'd find out what isn't working in the drone system. What is the drone company's problem? Because there's other drone companies that are likely have that same problem, and other delivery systems that have that problem. Learn how to protect your idea. I mean, you can't just walk in and hand it to them. There is some intellectual property stuff here that needs to be recognized, but the larger companies certainly are much more willing, in my opinion, to pay you for your idea and pay you to solve their problem than to go through the trouble of stealing it from you. So I would look for what's not working in their systems and focus everything on that.
I love that. And I think too, there's a lot of corporate innovation labs that we do a lot of this work with agency. Procter & Gamble has an innovation lab, AARP has innovation. A lot of these big corporates actually have kind of an intake process for, future forward ideas. And, there's challenges that you could apply for pitch fests, hackathons. I mean, there's sort of lighter touch ways that you get to participate and kind of, let your talent shine. by coming in through that. In fact, that's how we met Mary with an agency. We hosted a hackathon, with a very large Japanese insurance company who was looking for some breakthrough ideas to help. They also manage nursing homes. And so they were looking for some great ways to engage older adults. And Mary and Scott came with their 4Q Catalyst idea among 20 or 30 other, 1 or 2 person fledgling startup ideas. And next thing you know, we created agency around it. So I'd say another piece of advice is to put yourself out there, just get out there, get noticed, make friends. I like to say, make friends with people, right? So Mary and I didn't know each other, but she comes to the hackathon. Next thing you know, she's like a founding member of agency. So you never know what's around the corner. You never know what other people are looking for.
It's vital to be in front of people. And right now in February of 2021, there has never been an easier time in the history of the world to get in front of a wide and disparate and interesting group of people. Look what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I will say too, again, part of Agency and Founders Over 55, we do events. And I think it's also a great idea for each of you to take a look at the industry that you are in or that you want to break into and really deep dive on the whole event ecosystem around that industry or that idea. Find out who are the people that are the keynote speakers, who are the people that are getting invited to be a thought leader on a panel, who, like Rick, has written books on the topics, and reach out to them. Because they're also not only out there to talk about these great ideas, but they're there as kind of intake, on behalf of their company that's paying them to be on that panel, or they themselves are building their own company and looking for vibrant partners. So there's a lot out there that if we spend the time, a lot of signals out there that I think we can pull on those strings and see where they lead.
I couldn't agree more. I think that is the way of the future. Is we've got to just one by one rebuild new networks and new linkages, and lots of new solutions are going to come out of these.
Mm-hmm. So we do have somebody who's posting a question. I don't know your name, but you're GGGRN. So why don't you go ahead and turn on your mic and...
Hi, good afternoon. I thank you for allowing me to be on this forum. I found it by accident from someone who had relayed it to me. So I am at the double nickel stage of my life, and being a nurse for 35 years, bedside nursing is actually taking its toll on my physical being, working nights. So quite a few years ago, I decided that I was going to start up a home care company, and I went as far as getting door knockers at home gracefully, so elderly can stay at home and live their lives gracefully instead of going into, say, a assisted living or into a nursing home and, offer them some services. I kind of put that on the back burner because I felt as if I was meeting some roadblocks, maybe insurances or billing issues, how to build the bigger companies as opposed to doing this private home care company. So that was one of my roadblocks, and I kind of pushed it to the side. I started looking into this particular forum right now because my son, who just graduated from UMass Dartmouth with computer science engineering degree program, with web developing as a program, he specializes in that, but unfortunately due to COVID can't find a job. So, and aside from putting my own business skills or thoughts aside, I'm now thinking about how to develop a business with him or for him. I did have him get an FID number. He is developing his own website to put himself out there. He does have a domain name, but I'm really looking for maybe a knowledge base to help him set up his company and honestly help set up mine so that I can delve into this time and place of my life.
Yeah.
That's not going to be so physically tasking. Where do I start?
I think you're at the right place. I'm looking at the folks from Boston that invited me here today. This is the first step. This is joining with your peers and being a little bit vulnerable, like you just were, is hard to do, and it's the most important thing you can do. There are skill sets just on the first screen, let alone the second and third and fourth screens here. that are more than willing to step forward and help in small ways or help in big ways. The individual questions you asked, that's almost a bottomless number of things that you have to learn, and you're trying to do it with 2 companies, with your sons and yours. But the answer is what you're doing right now. It's not hard. You can do this. It's just new, so you can get to it. And you want to start small. You want to start smart. That means getting in a network, to me, which you're doing. But the most important thing is to start right now. Don't keep putting it off. You've got the skills. You've got your personal both of those companies where you and your son are in high demand right now. Yeah. It just, people got to find you.
You know, and Rick, in your book, you do have these great like checklists, or at least questions and worksheets to ask yourself to maybe, and I'm sorry, what was your first name? GGGRN.
Actually, it's Grace.
Grace, okay. Oh, Grace RN, thank you. Okay, okay. So Grace, you know, I think that, you know, to kind of arrive at sort of the next level of your thinking about how to apply, you know, in Rick, in your book, you're like, you know, do you want, what scope gets you excited? Is it local, hyper-local? Are you thinking of something national? Are you thinking global? You know, how do you want to leave the world a better place? You know, your legacy, what impact do you hope to have? I feel like that, you know, how can you help people? I think that there's some really clever lines of questioning. How would somebody like Grace kind of then say, okay, I started something, it turned out that there was this like really nasty ecosystem roadblock, like insurance, it just got messy. Let me pull back for a second. How do you continue to probe your own thinking?
I think if I understood the question right, I'm going to go back to the previous answer. To Grace's point, the answers to almost every question are probably on one of these 4 screens. It's probably in the LinkedIn group, in these meetings. If that person isn't here now, they'll show up. But you've got to be brave enough to continue to ask the questions and say that you need it. Given that, networking is the answer. It really is the only way we can all do it as individuals right now in this world where most of the commerce space is getting sucked up by much bigger companies. It's leaving this long, fruitful tail that we can all do commerce together in. But you need to be able to be in these networks.
So I'm going to then raise my hand. So Grace, I'm happy to have you reach out to me. There's so many problems that we see for older adults who are isolated at home that could be solved by a nurse with your level of experience and some technology and, you know, that some kind of digital health solution. So I'm happy to spend some thinking time with you. So why don't you go ahead and send me your email at duplin@cic.com.
Told you so.
Okay. So I'd love to open it up. So Mary and Paul and Jerry and Doug, so thoughts, questions that we haven't covered yet that you'd love us to pursue a little further.
Hi. You know, I can't stress, you know, as Grace was speaking, I'm kind of holding myself back here, but it's getting it. You have to learn more about what's happening, even on a local level, or even more importantly, on a local level. It's like Rick said: think small, think smart. You know, there's the net, even though COVID has put a damper on face-to-face meetings, there are groups that are meeting. There are groups that are meeting, and you have to ferret them out. You have to get information about what is going on in the area that you're interested in. And when you find that out, and it's not that difficult, you know, you go online, you Google care groups, you know, then you start breaking it down. Is it a certain age group? Is it men? Is it women? Is it for people who want to stay at home? You know, you've got to start zeroing in on all these things. But it's not difficult to do, but you have to put the time in. You know, if you get yourself a website, and if you do all of these sort of administrative things, a lot of times it feels like you're doing a lot. But it's not enough. You got to get people to your website. Your website has to represent what it is that you're doing. The other thing is going right back to Rick's presentation. What is it that there are a lot of agencies doing home care for elderly people? From your experience, 35-year experience as an RN, have you observed something that they're not doing right? You know, is there something lacking in what they're doing? And those are the key elements. Find out what's going on out there. And if you have a sense of what they're not doing right, then you start focusing in on that. Going right back to what Rick said, keep it small, keep it smart. You know, it's not a very complicated answer, but that's how you have to reach out. It's on a personal level at this point. Anyway, my quick observation, Grace.
Thank you, Jerry. You're right.
And I'll just add a little bit that also, I think, reinforces, Rick, what you said. And I'd like to ask a question of my own on behalf of everyone. So I really like and agree with the equip yourself. And that's including creating a legal entity when you're ready to do business, because you're at risk if you don't. And I think it's also coming to these kind of meetings and reading. I'm not plugging Rick's book because there's a lot of books out there about startups, but I will plug Rick's book because he's with us and I love his book. Read the things and look at the advice so that when you are taking your next step, you have a sense of what are the truly unanswered questions that you haven't seen in anyone's book of how to be a startup, how to be successful, and ask those questions. And those are the questions that humans in your network will help you most with. If they see that you've done some homework and you know some of the basics. Beyond that, I love this idea of Seth's idea of the minimal viable audience. Because a lot of us in previous entrepreneurial lives, and I've been in a few, we dream of that big golden ring customer who's going to be our first $1 million or $100,000 or whatever success story. And we don't think enough about how can we run our business as long as we need to and solve the problems we envision solving with local customers, with people who we already know, and we're solving their problems. So Rick, my question back to you in that regard is, what do you feel is a realistic time frame for a new founder, a solopreneur, or someone who's in a small network to spend before they land their first paying customer?
It's like everything. It's on the other hand. But thank you, Mary. It's a good question. And I think everybody's got to do it a little differently depending on where they're at. But I generally try to throw 6 months of, this is me personally, of treading water before really landing a customer. But before I start that 6 months, I usually have a handful of potential customers in mind. And I bring them in as a mastermind group and let them tell me how dumb my solutions are for 6 months. And by the time I'm ready, usually 1 or 2 of them is ready to go. And that's been across industries. It's the same thing as when I leave a previous employment, I usually take a little sabbatical and put it in, get the idea, put it in front of some people. But 6 months is a realistic number. Some people won't have 6 months. I don't think entrepreneurship is it's not a way to buy shoes for the kids. It takes longer than you expect. That's why I end up with, we say start small, start smart, but the most important thing is to start right now, because it's going to take longer than anybody wants. It just does. It's like everything else in life. So give yourself some deadlines to get a paying customer and shoot for those. But you don't have to jump off a bridge if you don't get to it.
Well, and I'd like to add to that in my own building my own practice as a public speaking coach. I realized that each engagement that I got was advanced like a learning objective. So it might, like, I didn't necessarily have a curriculum that I could teach a class with. I had all great ideas, but I wanted to, so somebody asked me to teach a workshop for 2 hours. So that was a great opportunity to develop the first part of that curriculum, and did that a bunch of times. And then somebody asked me to deliver, a 12-week course at a community college. And so I'm like, well, I don't have a 12-week course, but you know what? It was like, great. So each gig, if you will, actually advanced the learning objective and then deepened, what I could bring to, and now that all of that work can now be codified and priced out, and I don't have to start from scratch anymore, and you just keep building from there. So I think it's interesting when you say like the 6 months, it's like set yourself up on a learning objective path. And so that when you say yes, it isn't necessarily have to be yes for the full vision, manifestation of your vision, but maybe it's you're saying yes to this one thing that either you're scared to do and then you just do it, and now that's behind you and you've learned something, or you're adding another, tool to your toolkit. And over time, now you can really start to charge the fees that you always imagined you would be able to.
Well, and it's even if you go ahead and do it and you were scared to do it, even if you did it badly, you've learned from that. And all those little baby steps that you took, Danielle, I mean, look who's running the meeting here. This paid off. I mean, it's a defined skill set that's really needed, obviously. And it paid off with those hard little steps that didn't often probably cost you much money, but it cost you an angst and worry. But you got through it, right? And it's not hard, it's just new.
Well, and I'll share then. Well, thank you, Rick. And I'll share that for those of you, again, who, are in your corporate careers and maybe find yourself, because of this pandemic, that there's not really much to go back to, or things have changed for, your company and so forth. I did a lot of soul searching, and I thought, well, even though I was a vice president, executive, innovation, I have, software engineering background, the thing that I loved to do the most, that brought me the most joy, was to help people get ready to get up on stage and talk about their idea. That was just a never-ending source of joy for me. And I wound up coaching a lot of my colleagues along the way. Monica's smiling. She knows we did this at Fidelity. And I was like, what, could I build a practice around that? I don't know. There's so many other things I could do, but that thing was just so full of joy. And so indeed, it took a million little steps to now make that add up. So I encourage each of you who, have this wealth of experience and decades, what is the thing that you're doing or that you've been doing that just brings you endless joy? And also the thing that your friends keep asking you for favors for, like, could you help me with X, fill in the blank? Like, that's the thing that maybe you can start charging for. Maybe not your friends, but you build a business around it.
And there may be some seed funding for your business through your current employer. I mean, we're exploring this idea of phased retirements, where maybe you don't want to work 70 hours a week anymore, and the company thinks you're a little bit overpaid, and wouldn't they love to have, they're not going to tell you there's somebody 20 or 30 do your job. But the phased retirement, maybe you go to them and say, look, I have this industry skill set. I watched this in the food industry out in the Midwest, and people would get to their 60s and they would be forced out of these companies, and they loved these companies and they loved their industry. And what I ended up doing is trying to help them network. Sometimes they weren't even from the same companies, but they knew the industry really well. And as individuals, they could come together and all of a sudden have a consulting practice that went back out and changed the companies that they used to work for. But the companies slide out and gave them some support because it was in the company's interest, not because they're really nice companies. They're getting focused work at a focused pay rate that matches the goals of that entrepreneurs plural. But I was able to facilitate people coming from 3 or 4 different companies that had similar mindsets and similar skills, but different networks, and you put them together, and all of a sudden these people were gold in that industry when they were just an older employee prior to that. It's a perspective kind of a thing.
I absolutely love that anecdote. I think that is definitely a repeatable process for just about everybody on this call. So thank you for sharing that, Rick. And so any other questions that anybody would like to present before we go to breakouts?
Rick, going back to something you were kind of touching on earlier, and even gets to this Seth Godin thing about minimum viable audience, which is fundamentally how many people do you really need to sustain or grow your business. Don't think millions, it might be a few thousand. We all end up in the dip, maybe not necessarily the entrepreneurial growth dip where sales stall, but the personal dip when things get hard, what's your work through mindset, expectation setting, attitude for us to get through that dip?
So one of the things I'll say is go and read Paul Long's writings on this. He's very good at this.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. Right. This isn't following your bliss every day, and you can follow your bliss right over a cliff. But it is a job, and you have a responsibility to yourself, and more importantly, you have a responsibility to the problems that you're addressing, that you're bringing a solution to. So continuing to work for the betterment of the planet is a goal for me. Not just the physical planet, which is obviously something important, but all of us as humans on this planet. That's a motivation. You, Paul, and all of us on this call all have specific knowledge and networks that we can apply to these, and the world does need us. So it's not, even if our own motivation isn't causing us to tap dance out of bed, the world is pulling us and they need us, and we have solutions. Imagine how many different solutions are across this many people and coming together in different combinations. Mm-hmm. So, Paul, I don't know if that answered your question directly, but it is a matter of addressing the needs of the planet that we're here to serve, and then finding peers to surround ourselves with that can help keep that spirit alive.
Mm-hmm. So I'll use this as an opportunity then to talk about a potential new service that the steering committee, we've been noodling, which is this idea of like board for a day, essentially like a business roundtable of peers in our community here, where you as the entrepreneur, like maybe you're stuck or maybe you're in a dip. I love this phrase, like what is the work through mindset to get through a dip? Like I love that. And we would assemble a small group. You get the stage for an extended period of time. You get to do your pitch. We provide feedback, and Grace, you're getting this all right now because the chat is filled with all these great ideas right now. So you put yourself out there, and we also are thinking about revenue generating opportunities. And so, might this be something that people would be willing to pay for? Would this be something that sponsors would be willing to step in and sponsor or sponsor the growth of this club in general? So I would, we don't really have a poll ready unless, I don't know, Paul, if you can put together a real quick poll. But we're gathering a group of folks to help us think through what the design of this like board for a day concept. And so if there's any of you who are interested in being on our little design panel, we would love to hear from you, because we keep wondering, would the members like this? Do they need this? Would they be willing to pay for it? If so, how much? What would need to be, to be part of the structure to make it worthwhile? So you can send me an email at duplin@cic.com, Duplin, DUPLIN @cic.com.
Would you
or
put that in chat?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Reach out to me at dup@cic.com. Okay. If you'd like to be part of our design charrette, we'll spend about an hour or so kind of thinking through what this could look like. It'll probably be in about 2 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time. And we'd love to hear your ideas. So I think at this point, if there's no more questions, I know there's probably a lot that you're noodling here, but if there's, we'd love to go to breakout. And so this is an opportunity for you to get to meet a handful of other members. We'll do 6 breakouts. So each of them will be led by one of the the steering committee members, and Rick will lead a breakout as well. And the question that we'd love for you to discuss is, if you're stuck, what do you need to get unstuck? Like, what do you need from the ecosystem that can help you to get unstuck? And for those of you who actually did get through this dip, you worked through this dip, what were some of the strategies that you used? You know, was it a mindset shift? Was it actual activities? Was it a combination of the two? I know, Rick, in your book, you literally just say block time on your calendar, like put time on your calendar every single day to work on your startup. Like sometimes just doing that life hack gets you, you know, the momentum that you need. So it could be a small idea or a big idea. So, thank you, Rebecca. So we're going to go to breakouts. So talk about what do you need to get unstuck, or what advice do you have for getting unstuck? And we'll reconvene in about 15 minutes to wrap up the event. All right. So
the question is in the chat as well, if you forget.
Great. And for those of you, again, if you want to chat me directly, if you want to be part of our design roundtable, you know, let me know. So perfect. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We'll wait for everybody to come back. I'll put my chat back on.
You never have enough time in breakout sessions.
I'm glad you said that, because we always agonize when we have, especially when we have a fabulous speaker like Rick, how much time to devote to the panel conversation and then the breakouts. And then sometimes the breakouts, you know, anyway, so thank you all for participating. Thank you for coming back. And we know that the advertised end for this event was 5:30 because we didn't want to have a 2-hour meeting on everyone's calendar from 4 to 6. But we are going to stick around for another half hour or so, just for some, you know, more casual networking, kind of similar to if we were meeting in person and folks wanted to kind of rush the stage or just continue just noodling an idea. So the steering committee and Rick, we're going to be hanging out. We welcome all of you to stay. But to bring sort of a formal end to the meeting, again, thank you to each of you for your willingness to be here. It's a vulnerable act to, you know, share what you're working on, what you're stuck about, you know, admitting what you don't know, finding, you know, figuring out how to get to your next, you know, your next milestone. So I congratulate each of you for putting yourself out there. You're already ahead of the game than you were an hour and a half ago. Secondly, again, this is a volunteer member-led group. We're part of agency, but we also want to extend and grow this group. So if you know anybody who would be interested in sponsoring this work, or, you know, aligning with our mission and helping us reach even more folks nationally, internationally, like, we're very excited. You know, we'd love to have a conversation. And then finally, again, some of you have been reaching out to me through chat. I haven't looked at my email, but go ahead and send me an email if you'd like to participate in our design charrette on the roundtable for a day concept, because we'd love to give each of you that spotlight. So I know the breakouts felt like they went really fast, you know, but you know, we'd love to give, you know, one at a time, like a full hour, where we really dig in and we get to pick apart all the pieces of the idea that you're working on and the company that you're building, and see how, you know, maybe we can just offer some value feedback and learn from you as well. So Rick, some thoughts, some wrap up thoughts.
Well, right away, I've heard some great business ideas. I must have heard 6 or 7 of them in the last hour. These are great. Everybody's got a piece of themselves that they can dedicate to making the world a little better. And commerce is something where you get immediate feedback, whether you're doing a good enough job. I celebrate all of your interests, and I have just put my own email and the URL for the Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs in there. It's still in beta, but we're collecting emails for a newsletter. It'll be live by May or so. So I'm very grateful for the invitation. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to stay around as well with the organizing team.
And Mary and Jerry and Doug and Paul, any kind of wrap up thoughts?
I do want to report on two great ideas among the many really interesting discussions we had in my breakout room. One is that it would be of interest to many in the breakout room, at least, and I hope everyone, if we created a way for our members to share their expertise and possibly offer one or two short courses or programs, so that we could really begin to help people take small steps and also to help each other by sharing specific areas of expertise through courses that we might host in future meetings.
I love this idea.
I did too. We all did. And
we
Paul,
have like 50
this is for you as I swear I didn't say this. This was someone else in the group. We would like to know what stage everyone is at. And it's time for a survey. And as I shared with my group, we have put together a very clear description of what stage are you at, from dreaming to ready to exit. And it would be very helpful for all of us to kind of know that and maybe group together with people who are at the same stage or at different stages, depending on how we would like to begin to network and help each other. So survey time. Those are the two ideas that came out of our discussion.
So you're going to be sending a survey?
Yes,
we
are.
Okay.
And I'll add two other quick ideas that came out of our group. One is that there are lots of organizations out there that provide the kind of support that people who are stuck that is also available in an informal way through organizations like Founders Over 55, but SCORE, the Center for Women Enterprise, we talked about it, the MIT Enterprise Forum, E4All, and many others. And I mention that because at our last meeting, for those of you who weren't there, we did have a conversation about business mentors and ways to connect to organizations like SCORE and SBA and so on. So you can look back at the past meeting. There's a recording, and you can take advantage of that information. The other thought was that when a problem seems so big that you get stuck in the face of it, the simplest possible solution is to break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. I have a friend who says, who talks about ridiculously small steps that are so small that you can't help but achieve them. And the process of solving for that ridiculously small step gives you a pump of dopamine that sort of propels you to the next small step, and eventually, step by small step, you get unstuck. You get to the solution of a bigger challenge.
And you know what, Doug? That is, I'm a trained software engineer, and it's exactly how we approach a computer science project. Right? Like, so you got to make the plane fly. Okay, that seems pretty daunting, but you break it down into infinitely smaller and smaller pieces, and make sure they can stitch together. And then eventually the plane flies. But, you know, every day you're coding just n number of subroutines or whatever it is, you know, and then collectively, you know, you can make the plane fly. So I love that idea of breaking the big problems down into the smallest chunk, that smallest addressable chunk. So beautiful, beautiful. And thank you also for, I love this conversation about what stage are we at. So Doug, I might toss it back to you, because one of the other things that the committee has been working on is codifying a point of view around the different stages of entrepreneurship. And we could use that as a framework to, you know, guide each of, you know, your journeys, but also we would use it as our curriculum framework to make sure that we're hitting all the different stages and offering up workshops and meetups and so forth. So So you as members, if you joined us, at the very, very, very beginning of your journey, that there's always going to be something worthwhile as you continue and progress through growing and scaling. So Doug, I'm going to put you on the spot. So do you want to just give us like a little bit of a highlight of what you what you put on paper there for the different stages?
Sure. The first thing I'd say is that it's not a finished product, but it is a product that we want to get input to from people who are in the middle of doing this work. And it does two or three things. One is it identifies a variety, a sequence of stages, not too many because we want to keep it simple and accessible. So maybe 5 or 6, I don't remember exactly. But it also talks about what the aspects of building a business are at each of those stages. So what kind of planning do you need to do at each of those stages? What's the mindset you bring to the business development process at each of those stages? What are the marketing challenges? What are the financial needs, and so on at the various stages? So it's a kind of matrix, and we'll be in a position to share that very soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. So actually, we were also thinking of building a whole program around that, about delving in. So could I have either a show of hands like this, or maybe if you want to use your little reaction button there, you can do a thumbs up. Who would be interested in having a meetup just on that, going through the different stages and the different mindsets? All right, that's good. Good. All right, so I think team. Okay, so then I'll ask a follow-up question then. Who is interested in helping us think through? We've got it's like 80%, kind of formed. So who would like to participate in a design charrette review of that? Want to raise your hand? Okay, so I think I'm trying to think what's the most efficient way of doing this. Maybe put your email in the chat. You can private message or go ahead, Paul.
If you want to join the LinkedIn group, that would certainly be a way in which we can continue to communicate and develop these ideas. I'm not trying to force anyone in there, but yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, but then, okay, yeah, so we can do that for sure. So joining the LinkedIn group, and then we'll have a way to direct message each other. But I just feel like for this very next, if anybody wants to literally get an invite to a meeting,
why don't we send the invites to everybody who is registered for this event, and that way we can respond. Would that be the simplest way?
Okay. All right, that's a good idea. Okay.
And if you would, when you're doing that, maybe give us what you're looking at creating here, whether you're looking for people to work with you on, what kind of groups are we creating, or just what are we looking to accomplish here in different ways? And then maybe people can sign up for different tasks.
The old call to action.
Love it. Yes. Yeah. So we're, our thinking kind of runs in different categories. One set of ideas is content for these events. What would be, what's on top of mind for you guys? Who would you like to hear from? Who are the authors that you're reading, and that we could extend an invitation to come and speak to us, much like Rick did today. So we'd love to hear your content ideas. So that's kind of one area. A second area is, as I mentioned, we're trying to come up with a set of products and services from the club that we could codify and offer to club members. And so we want to make sure we get the design right, knowing that it's definitely going to be an iterative process. And so we'd love to know, who just wants to kind of be a thought partner, for an hour or so to help us refine the design. And so that would be on this business roundtable idea. And then this next one is this sort of frameworks guideline that's really going to drive kind of how we think about this. So opportunities for you to just be a thought partner on growing the club, but also in helping us shape the agenda, for the information that we share. So we welcome your input. So any other stories that came out? Some folks have asked me, and I don't know if they're still here, asked me to explain a little bit more about agency. So maybe I'll just do a quick plug there. So if you go to cic.com/agency, cic.com/agency, I'll put that in the chat here. So we are a global network of entrepreneurs who are helping to improve the aging journey. And we have 4 key pillars. There's co-working space at the CIC, which we will return. I know we will. Pandemic is almost over. A co-working space at CICs around the world. We convene events around all kinds of topics, caregiving or brain science or, and a million topics around the aging journey, to feature thought leaders and startups. And we do direct connections to experts in the field that can help you achieve your next milestone. And our most important objective is to commercialize, which is to help people create products and services and companies around their big ideas. So we have members, it's growing. And from that work, we notice that many people, are in their encore career starting companies. And so that was kind of the insight to start the Founders Over 55 Club. So if you are interested in agency, I'd love to, can have a separate conversation there. But anyway, so I hope that answered your question. And I guess I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the wisdom about getting unstuck. What were some of the surprising ideas that you guys heard in your breakouts that you think you're going to start to use? Go ahead, Rick.
So I heard a great one from Grace. We all heard Grace talking about the nursing opportunity, and separately, she's got a son who's brilliant at computer stuff. And we all as a group decided for Grace without her permission that what a great idea to be able to serve older community members who also need computer help, as most do. So we get a twofer out of the deal. There, we just started a network for Grace.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, there's a company that I was coaching. They do, I forget the name, but they do like the Guru Bar, like the not the Guru Bar. What do you call it?
Genius.
Yeah, like customer service, like computer customer service, but for older adults.
Right.
And so like the computers folks are trained in, cognitive issues and so forth. And so they have they take extra time and, and it's really wonderful. And I just learned that in Massachusetts anyway, that younger people who accompany older adults to get a vaccine can get the vaccine themselves. And I'm like, as soon as you said, oh, I know older people and your son, I'm like, wow, there should be some kind of computer program that allows you to sign up for that service. Because not everybody knows somebody even in their neighborhood, who to even hang out with. So it could be like, you could create like a buddy system.
There's our network effect. We've just started 2 industries.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one of the things in our group was that and I think this is an important idea. Your entrepreneurial project doesn't have to be a profit-making project. It can be a nonprofit organization as well that provides services. And so one of the people in our group talked about some of the issues that she's got in setting up a direct hospice service. So we talked through some of the steps that she's going through right now. But my point really is, you're not limited. There are very, very important things you could do, like what Danielle just, you could set up a site where you could charge people to match up old folks with caregivers who get their vaccine. On the other hand, that can also be a nonprofit matching service that could provide a very, very important service. Because of, for example, transportation issues, right? I mean, that could be, it's not just going with an older person. There's an older person that can't get to Gillette or any of these massive sites. But anyway, nonprofit is just as good as profit making.
Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. And I'll tell you that the company that runs the vaccine clinic at Gillette Stadium happens to be a company that came out of the CIC, our business. The Cambridge Innovation Center runs co-working spaces, as I mentioned, for agency. They're very, 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 very good at it. And when COVID hit, they were the leaders right away in creating safer and work environments for people who, have to be in close contact. But realized that people were still afraid to come back to work, regardless of whatever safety precautions were put into place. And they thought, well, how do we help people get back to work? And so CIC said, well, what if we tested everybody? And we tested them often, and there we are in Kendall Square, Cambridge. We have great relationships with the Broad Institute and the labs that do a lot of these testing and all the hospitals. So we already had built all the trust that Rick is talking about in the network for decades. And so we started creating a testing service for our own employees and our own co-working residents. Next thing you know, everybody else in Kendall Square says, hey, could you test our employees too? So CIC Health is now a new company. As of August, a brand new testing company. We've now helped to facilitate nearly 1 million tests for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies in the greater New England area. We're doing all of the pooled testing at schools to help reopen schools. We have the statewide contract in Vermont to test hundreds of facilities in Vermont, including elder care and so forth. So my point is like in March, a year ago, the pandemic hit, hit us like everybody else. The business was going to tank. It was an existential threat. And from crisis came opportunity, right? And now because the group kind of proved themselves to with an innovative mindset, a growth mindset, and a partnership mindset to respond to the testing. Now we're invited to run the mass vaccine clinics, not only at Gillette Stadium, but also Fenway Park and the Reggie Lewis Center. So this is a company that did not exist 6 months ago. So I put that out there for everybody that, again, in crisis, Grace, to your point, look for what's really not working. And even if you start something for which you have no idea if you're going to make money, but you're solving a real problem, that might be a path to actually turning that into a profit-making business at some point.
I want to mention, Danielle, one other thing that came out of our conversation, and that is very often a problem that seems insurmountable, a place where you get stuck, coincides with a loss of confidence. And this gets to the point that I think Paul was making earlier with the dip question. And the question is, how then do you rebuild your confidence? How do you get back to a place where you have faith? This is a direct quote from, I think it was Steve Elliott. How do you get back to a place where you have faith that what you want to do can be useful? And I think in some ways it's stepping back and seeing that picture in a way that you saw it initially when you first started down this path, because we can get stuck in the forest and not see, we lose sight of the vision and we're seeing only the next tree. But I think it also has to do, or can have to do, with sessions like this, where you listen to each other and you get reinforced in a way that it's hard to do and maybe impossible to do if you're sitting alone in a room thinking about how big the challenge is that you're facing.
I love that, Doug. And, you're right. If you're in a dip where you're not getting more customers, that helps also, obviously with the revenue, but validates that you've got something worth buying. Sometimes it's interesting to go back to your prior customers and just kind of touch base with them. Maybe you haven't touched base with them in a year or so, like if you provide a service, or, I know that sometimes I'll go back to somebody who I coached for a high stakes public speaking event that they did, like a TED Talk or something. And their career has just, taken off. And it's interesting, as a confidence boost, but also it's with the benefit of time, people reflect back to you, what was the lasting value that your interaction with them like happen. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that was that valuable. And so then you can, you get that confidence boost, but then you bake that into your service, and then you can advertise with that. You can say, well, if that was true for that one client, potentially it's true with other clients. So I think that's one way.
And I'd also like to add too, on the emotional front of it, which is at the end of the day where it really gets. And, two things really helped me, and you all have kind of touched on it. I mean, one is number one is by learning, I learned to expect it. It's going to happen. Usually hits me somewhere between brushing my teeth and getting in bed. And it's like, who the hell am I to do? Or what am I? Oh my God, I am going to blow this. I'm going to end my life just as, But I know that that's going to happen because you talk to anybody who's done anything like this and they go through that kind of dip and the 50 other dips. Are my expectations managed properly? So many people quit because things don't go like they expect them to. How realistic am I being? And things of that sort. The other thing in the kind of mentoring or masterminding, accountability buddy, that person who's going to both kick your butt and pull you out of the hole. Yeah. Where you have that true mastermind relationship where neither one of you are really responsible for what the other one is doing, but there's someone you can share with. By sharing, as somebody mentioned, you get back more than you give, actually. And that mastermind, those colleagues, those people who can pull me out of the hole or slap me upside the head is the other thing that really helps me through that.
Yeah, I love that accountability buddy concept, because as long as you're not out of phase at the same time, you definitely can reach and help each other out. And I think there's something really fascinating that I'd love to unpack about, not meeting expectations, right? Like it's so important, obviously, to do goal setting and to have tiered goals, and then you have a path to achieve them. But so maybe you're not necessarily getting what you expected, but maybe there's other things that showed up, that could potentially be even better. Like I'll go back to the CAC, like, yeah, we fully expected that we were going to grow agency and all of the co-working, and we had this big growth path, and well, here comes the pandemic. And so it wasn't like we ever expected to start a health company. It was never, but it just kind of showed up, and there's 100 of us now, more than 100 in the company. And every one of us, none of us, not one of us, other than the COO that was hired out from outside, ever ran anything to do with health, anything. But you kind of like, it isn't what I expected, but it's what showed up.
As John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Maybe that's going to be our next event. What happened when you were made, and it turned out better.
And you guys were ready to visualize the new opportunity and see it.
Yeah. Joy, I'm seeing you're laughing at that. Do you have like something that's happening that you'd like to share? Yeah, top right, and you can unmute. There you go.
Sorry, my mouse had disappeared. It's my first visit, and I'm from England, as you can hear.
Welcome. Hi. You guys run some pretty crazy town council meetings, I gotta say.
Who thinks they're going to be famous one evening, in the papers the next day? Anything can happen to anybody. That's proof, isn't it? So.
Right. Well, welcome from England. So tell us what brings you here and what resonates with you in our conversation.
Right. I came through Eventbrite, and I'm just starting up a company, just a one-man band, because I'm selling intelligence, so it's all in there. And my company is called Age Confident.
Okay.
And this is supporting people who have disabilities or long-term conditions which may turn into a disability. And as Rick was saying, going into somewhere nobody's dared go before, which I've done. and also using the word aging is a challenge because nobody this side of the pond anyway wants to talk about it. They're not ready, etc. So I've got some challenges. So but my main priority is to help people to plan and adapt as they age with their disability. So aging for me is, say, 40 onwards. So if somebody has MS in their 20s, by the time they're 40, they may be in a wheelchair or heading to using a wheelchair. Right. So my aging, as opposed to aged, is from sort of about 40-ish onwards.
Well, first of all, Joy, thank you for taking that on. It is such life-affirming, life-changing work. And we see that at Agency, you know, that's our motto is, you know, innovation for living longer and aging better. So it's one thing to have the miracle of extending lifespans. It's quite another to make every day filled with joy. And so I think what you're working on is fantastic. And I will say that part of that plan is that there's a lot of innovators who are very specifically looking at, you know, specific stages of the aging journey that could be wonderful partners with you along the way to offer the sense of hope and optimism, you know, for your clients. So I'd love to just stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but thank you. And you need Grace. Yes, you need to work with Grace and her son.
Absolutely.
You just took the word right out of my mouth, because I have a strong background and experience as a mother of a child with special needs. My brilliant son is Asperger's. And one of the key pieces that I feel is, as he gets older, you know, who's going to be there for him? Who's going to support him? Who's going to be there with, I'm sure he's going to be fine. But these are things that you think about early on when these kids come growing up with these challenges. You know, they're kind of dropped by the wayside or they fall through the cracks. You know, so I could certainly be of service to you.
Thank you very much. Right.
Good. Awesome. Well, why don't you guys direct message your emails to each other? So make sure you stay in touch. That would be a practical next step. And like Rick suggests, put it on your calendar, you know, make sure you do these things. I think sometimes, you know, we have all these great ideas. I'm not saying you guys, I know it happens to me, but you know, like you have all, like, back to expectation setting, you feel like your day is going to be so productive and you have all these things that you want to accomplish, but unless it's on the calendar and you have like practical next steps, it just
Thanks, Grace.
Doesn't happen.
It's nearly my bedtime now.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Thank you for us.
So I may leave you soon.
That's all right. That's quite all right.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm going to stick around for a while.
Beautiful, beautiful. So anybody else want to kind of just share what they're working on? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I just want to say that about the confidence topic that Paul Long brought up, that affects any and everyone. You know, I'm looking at this group and I'm part of that. I belong here as much as anyone, and I'm preparing a presentation about ageism for a group. What Rick said, especially about the world needs more of this audience to offer their experience and wisdom, you know, to companies, to other people. So it's great that so many in this group are really helping those that are in that category get organized and be prepared and get through the building blocks to, you know, unfold something and get it out there. So I think it's just a matter of a mindset of don't give up. It does take time. There is a hill to climb, but boy, if you can surround yourself with a group like this, you get all of the confidence and support you would need. So I'm all in about doing any other roundtable events or, you know, off the side that we could do just for helping each other and sharing experiences. It would be great.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, by the way, for having a conversation about ageism. That's, you know, that's near and dear to our heart, certainly at Agency. And that was actually one of the prime motivators for the Founders Over 55 Club is I've told this story before, but I was sitting there one day and my phone blew up because so many people were texting and tweeting at me that there was a VC in Manhattan who was on stage at a financial conference saying, "Hey, I'll never give money to a founder over the age of 40." And they said to me, "Oh, Duplin, what do you say about that?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to get into a Twitter war with a VC. However, let's take a look at the data and let's do what we do best, which is build great companies." And it turns out that, and we've highlighted this in previous events, that founders in their 40s and 50s are actually have runaway successes more than founders in their 20s. Now, we want to be multi-generational. We're not here to be like only about 55 plus. What we're saying is that we want to be an example of living your best life regardless of your age. And that at some point we don't even have to be talking about our age. It just is. Like, there is a fabulous person starting a company, and let's not use the number, as a cutoff. And so I'd love to hear, Larry, more about what your point of view about ageism, and if there's anything we can do to help contribute to your thought leadership there. That's amazing.
Oh, thanks. I will get my draft together. It's a deep subject. I did some research just recently to gather more information, but it is that silent barrier for people looking for jobs. That are trying to interview, trying to just answer an ad or something, and because of that barrier, I have kind of shifted my coaching more to those who are ready to start a business, because that is so difficult. I still, of course, work with those looking for work, particularly veterans. But it needs to be discussed. The companies need to understand these points, how positive it is, the contributions they can make, everything they have to offer. And like you say, it shouldn't be looking at gray hair, but what do they bring to the table and get around this. But I think progress is being made, but it's slow.
Right.
Sir, this is Doug Dixon. I'd love to be in touch. I have some resources nationally that might be helpful to the work that you're doing.
Thanks
and
very
I'd
much.
learn more about that specifically as well.
Oh, great, Doug.
My email, I sent it to you, but I'd love to be in touch.
Okay, great.
Yeah. No, that's thank you for that. Yeah, Sonora, go ahead. You're raising your hand.
Yeah,
Hi.
I have a comment. One of the things I think as founders over 50, I'm really passionate about connecting with the young people, like enabling interns and early career people to participate in my business and learn.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Motivation. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because we have a couple of speakers that we have, that we've been reaching out to for the rest of the curriculum. And one topic was going to be multi-generational teams, like how to build multi-generational teams. What should you be thinking about? How do we actually, not have any biases? So here we are talking about ageism bias, but also like younger generation biases. So how do we beautifully, and in fact, even come up with like a reverse mentoring. So yes, you're right, like mentor the interns and then have like the interns mentor us, and we both bring gifts to the table, right? So Nora, tell us a little bit more about your business.
Okay, well, I'm in engineering and I do mechanical engineering. I've had a history of working in the medical device industry, but in the last few years, I've been working in additive manufacturing, so 3D printing. Nice. Connecting with companies that have 3D printing skills and working with small to mid-sized enterprises here, and trying to build opportunities for them to match up design for 3D printing with actual manufacturing 3D printed products. I love it. And my challenge is I really need a good business partner, because I'm more of an engineer, so I just kind of get involved in projects versus how to really take it to the next level. But throughout my career, I've always had interns working with me. And I found that, as exactly as you said, Daphne, the point about I learn from them, but they also learn from me. And it's a great partnership.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so the multi-gen, that's one topic we want to cover, but I also just love the other point that you made, which is you have the idea and you need the business partner. because we find that there are a lot of folks who really good at the business side, but maybe, the spark of the idea or what, like they don't have the particular passion. They're like, oh, it's all my passion. Like, it's like, so I'm wondering if you guys think that we ought to have some kind of, matchmaking, if it's like, okay, people with ideas here, people who like to run businesses here, and you all just kind of speed date, and maybe you find somebody who can at least help you think through that next step.
Yeah.
Does that sound
That'd
like
be great.
you guys want to put your thumbs up in the reaction if that's something that would be useful? Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Yeah. That's, and that happened just through serendipity, as I mentioned, the Ginger Gems example, and we'll feature them in an upcoming meeting. They just met at one of our club events, and next thing you know, she's got a business guy who's helping her make her business plan, that she didn't have before. So good. Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else? We're definitely over our time, 6 o'clock. I could talk all night. So I just want to make sure that, if everybody feels like they need to dash, by all means. It was such a pleasure seeing you guys. I'm willing to hang out for a little bit longer. Does anybody have any other thoughts that they want to share with the group?
Oh, I do, if I
Go
could.
ahead, Sarah, of course.
Oh, here's my pitch. I'm just looking for enthusiastic people to work with. I'm working on a nonprofit to build or provide housing for homeless people. So I'm stepping off the edge of the earth. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it through my church. I have no experience in building houses. I have tech experience and user experience, design experience, but a lot of it. So I want to give back. I'm retired. Yes, somebody's Grace.
Yes, Sarah, I have an idea that I've had in the back of my mind forever. If I was a millionaire, I'd probably go around and buy out all the old schools that are no longer functional. They're filled with rooms, they have heat, they have a bathroom, everything that a homeless person needs to take care of themselves, just for a mat on the floor, a roof over their head. Provide them with outreach services, provide them with, different tools to help, maybe a social worker who could, help them get back on their feet. They'd have one place to go. I wish I could buy some of the schools that are in this area. They're beautiful buildings. But unfortunately, they're no longer functional as schools. So that area, a piece of real estate you might want to invest in.
It's possible. We don't know where this is going to go. I'm open to anything. Rehab, build, stumble upon, get given. We're not in the real estate business exactly. We're in the provide housing business kind of. But that's a great idea. Yeah, and work with the city and twist a few arms and lean heavily on and all that sort of, just get it done. I don't know how much we can get done, but whatever we do, it's good.
This sounds very much like Habitat for Humanity.
It does, but we're not going to get out there with hammers or plumbing tools. We're just too old to do that. We're going to make it happen. We're going to hire those services or get them donated or whatever. But we figure we can work to solve this problem at a higher level than just, putting a stake in the ground or something like that, or working around the problem. We really got to go make something happen. And I'm not talking about building big buildings. It could be a collection of 50 very small things.
There's a whole lot of behind the scenes work that needs to be done in that. Towns need to either donate the land or donate a building. Funds need to be raised to purchase a building. You need to get sponsorship, either in-kind goods or people power, or there's a whole lot of work beyond showing up at the work site. And Jimmy Carter does it, and he's pretty old.
He is. You're so right. Are you interested in joining our group?
I'll reluctantly decline. I've been involved with Habitat for Humanity. Just
Mhm.
There are other models out there too, and I'll mention two. One is Judy Cockerton, Cockerton. She formed an organization called the Treehouse Foundation, and it was to solve not homelessness, but, well, I guess in the way it was, but kids in the foster care system. She's been very successful, and I'm sure she'd be willing to have a conversation with you. The other is an organization called Nesterly, and what Nesterly has done is to match, Danielle, you know this, is to match people with extra rooms in their houses with students. And I'm not sure that that's a perfect fit for the challenge that you face, but I'm sure there's a lot to learn from the experience that they've gained in the work that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I have one request, Larry, here for Rick. Your idea for, it seems like you have a great solution that is on my mind about your Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs in Development, because it seems like it would answer or help so many people, and it could appeal to a lot of us in this group. It certainly does to me. Can you talk a little more about that?
I can, Larry. Thank you. It's in beta. I actually started, so we're all entrepreneurs talking to one another here. I started a really wonderful website for this system, and it was so bad, my board of directors wouldn't even give out the link to anyone else. So I've taken, this afternoon, we took the website down, but I have a landing page there to collect for some information about this. But the idea is there are really good solutions all over the place. Look what these good folks are doing here with their LinkedIn group. I think that it can be a network of networks, but these resources are here. We all have them. We're all ready to share them. It's just putting yourself in place to receive them. And if we can make these, and I'm doing this one as a nonprofit. I've done for-profits and nonprofits, but I think just a little bit amount of revenue will float this thing, and it could go national in scale. And think of I heard 5 or 6 ideas today that people in, pick a place, Mexico or India or Akron, Ohio, would love to know about, but they don't know us. So how do we put that common ground together? How do we make a new commons, right? And not drive it into the tragedy of the commons, but the success of the commons. I think we're right on the verge of that. So it'll be one step forward at a time, Larry, to be honest with you. The format will be similar. I'm looking at this Clubhouse thing carefully. I think that that's a good potential public outreach, not necessarily a closed group like this is or was. But how to reach out and get those people into all of our systems so that if somebody comes and says, well, I need this kind of problem, I would know that Mary Cronin and Danielle and all these good folks here are right off stage left, or better yet, they're in the room and say, I've got a solution to that. I don't think this is hard. I think this is basic blocking and tackling and just putting ourselves in the right place at the right time.
Good. Well, and I will say just one tiny nuance that to Rick's point. So we're an open group too. So I didn't want to say that we're closed necessarily, but we're excited to keep growing. And I think that the more that we have these kinds of interactions and we can feed into other more structured, programs and so forth, like we also want to listen for what you need to be successful. And it's very likely that you're going to need different things at different stages of your journey. So we're going to be collaborating with Rick for sure. We're going to be collaborating with other organizations like, we already do with Encore, and we mentioned earlier SCORE for mentoring and so on. So we're just at the beginning of this journey. We don't know where it's going to take us, but we're super excited that all of you guys stuck around for even longer. You get the prize. I will say we should dash at this point, unless anybody has some final thoughts that they want to share that they're just eager to share. I don't want to cut anybody off who's got something that they're thinking about. Nope. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. And we really look forward to getting together again, and send us your ideas, join the LinkedIn group, and keep a lookout for what comes next. Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
team.
Bless you all. Thank you.